Thank you, first of all of you, for coming to our demo today. Just want to thank Amy from Microsoft, who's right here at the front, for inviting me to do this. I'm really excited to be here because I'm deeply passionate about sort of bringing citizens and communities to the same conversation and thinking, how do you do more with data? Especially when that data is large, it often sits in a lot of spreadsheets, it sits in massive PDFs, and what can you layer on top of that to really have sort of tell a story about your community in a way that's meaningful? So I think that's what Power BI does in a really terrific way, and I just want to start this demo by saying, has anybody in this room heard of this application? Awesome, 2 people. Well, I'm excited to show it to you today, and we'll start by thinking about what can you do with this application and data. And just as background, this is a completely free application. It's integrated into Office 365. It works with Excel. It's an add-in. It can also be downloaded as a separate designer, and we'll show you that through the presentation. So I thought to myself today, we're in the city of Boston. Let's think, what are the most requested statistics about the city and other cities, and what can we do with that data to show some relevance? So I went on the census website, and apparently this is it. You think population, age, the kind of businesses and industry in your community, level of educational attainment, type of government it is, origins, poverty, a couple of things that to me don't mean very much. And I've worked with cities and towns for about 10 years, and I don't know what to do with this when I'm looking at it on just kind of a flat computer screen. So when I go to Microsoft Excel, and I put that data in a spreadsheet as raw data for Boston and a couple of the other cities in Massachusetts, and the other capital cities across the US, I think, all right, what am I going to do with this? I take my data, I format it as a table, and what Microsoft Power View allows you to do is take that data and basically bring it to life in a couple of really easy steps. So you can either enter your email and download the free designer, which gives you a preview that I'll show you in a second, or right within Excel, probably in a place that's buried and other than the 3 of you know exists, you go to File, you go to, wait, hold on. You have to be in your data. You're gonna go to File, you're gonna go to Options, and there's a little place called Add-ins, and then you're gonna go to COM Add-ins, and when you click Go, you see a couple of options, and you wanna check off Power View and Power Map, because that's gonna help you bring this data to life. So once you have that done, it's so simple. You literally go to Insert, and you create a Power View sheet. Now, a Power View sheet is really unique in that it's not just taking data and turning it into a chart, but we're gonna show you how to take that data and then create it, visualize it, and then actually share it with your friends, share it with your community, share it with anybody on the internet in a way that's visual and dynamic. So right here, Power View is already showing me all the fields on my spreadsheet. So I've entered in those key characteristics that I showed you guys from the census website, including the names of cities, the states that they're in, some of the key indicators related to each of them. And what we do with that data initially is, we have it right on there. Again, it means nothing. It's just listed in rows. And what Power View allows you to do is to click on that data and say, how do you want to show it graphically? Do you want to show it in a bar chart? Do you want to show it in a line chart? Do you want to show it in a pie chart? What's going to tell you the story of your data meaningfully? Do you want to slice and dice it? So initially, let's delete this. You go to this sheet that I've created where we have all the cities for all the 50 states on the side, all the major capitals. And we're looking at the data showing populations, veterans, who's foreign born, sort of the composition of your community in a really dynamic way, where you can actually scroll and the data changes depending on what you pick. So you've converted multiple rows of data into something that you can actually manage and actually look at and actually play with in front of someone else. And when you share that spreadsheet, you're sharing not just rows of data, but you're sharing a sheet that shows a visualization and a presentation of that data, if that makes sense. What you can do with another sheet is you can basically take this and turn it into showing, for instance, median household income, other indicators alongside each other for each city, and start deriving insights that tell you, what does my city look like against another one? What do we look like against all the 50 US states? You can actually filter that just by actually clicking on the actual chart or clicking on the side and selecting any one of the filters that you want after you've got your data in there. We can actually take that step a little bit further and insert a new Power View sheet and create one right here together. So let's see. We want to put our view one. We want to go to insert. And there we have a blank one to begin with. So we can just title it however we want. And by clicking, Excel already shows us all of the fields in our spreadsheet, so we can actually select whatever we want to see. So for instance, if we wanted to see the number of companies in each community, you could just click on that, and immediately it appears on your Power View sheet. You click on city, you can click on your state. And by clicking within the Design tab, you can just turn that into a pie chart for your, and see your community against everything else. And that's sort of just one example of the way that you can shift and change within different modes of visualization, all within one document. Now, some of you might be thinking, you know what, this is great, but how can you do a little bit more? Because it's, is it a flat presentation? Is it dynamic enough? Well, let's take a look and think about what would your community look like on a map. So we go back to our data, and without going into a different spreadsheet, what we can do is insert map. And this will probably just take about a second. But this will take what otherwise would be flat data that's presented in a visual form and something that can be 3D and actually showing you the data within communities. So we'll open that. And without creating an entirely different data model, you can take that data and transform it at a totally different level. It's opening up slowly. And this works with the Bing API. So because we've already included the names of all the cities in our data model, Microsoft Excel already maps it to the right places. So basically what you have is, I'll show you the video and then we'll go through each sheet, but you have something that shows you the story of communities and how they change. You can see population growth, you can see different layers that show you poverty, you can see income. And to me as a visual person, this is where I really start to understand, okay, now I get why the US Census says that these are the facts that people most request. Because with this, I know which states have high concentrations of poverty. I know which states have income levels that actually contribute to that. I can see population growth and see where it's growing within the elder segment of the population. I can see where it's foreign-born populations. I can see that data finally telling me a story, and it actually allows me to be a little bit of a documentarian for my community. Because with this, you can actually create whatever video you want. You can add effects, and all without knowing how to code, all without actually being a developer, which is how I started using this tool. And by just sitting as a citizen and saying, what is it that I want to know and how do I integrate those facts to tell me a story? So if you saw how easily I literally just clicked on map and this just created itself, I'll show you how you can actually go through this and choose the different things that you want to show and the optionality and the visual details that you can add. So for instance, I started out with the first one by saying, you know what, I just want to see population because I just want to see how that stands out and how each state compares to each other. So right away, Excel already populates on the side, right here in the right-hand pane, all of the things that I put in my spreadsheet, in my model, when I created and formatted it as a table. And all I have to do is literally check off, and things disappear. So if I only want to see one, I can add one. If I want to see all of the variables against each other, I can add them all. And then I have basically the ability to say, all right, let's add a new scene by clicking up here. And I can take this and I can completely delete that. And I can say, you know what? I want to see housing data. I want to know where all those people live. I want to know if there's enough of a concentration within states that have an unbelievably high population to actually give people a meaningful place to live. But I don't want to see a bar chart. I want to see a heat map. So you can do that. And then one of the things that you can do is you can change the names of your layers. You can go here and actually add effects. So if you actually want that scene to be of longer duration, because again, you're kind of your own videographer for your community, which I think is kind of cool. You can add different transitions. So you can have the map circle, you can have it, fly in, you can have it fly over, as you're thinking like how to make this really visually pleasing without going into Encoder or Adobe Captivate or anything else. and do that for every single scene and make your video as long as you want. And then here, within the fields list, you can go back and add anything else. And then you can also add other layers. So for example, let's say that we wanted to have individuals living below the poverty level, median age, and actually see the correlation between those two things. You know, we can do that. And then you can also, you know, add in the state level data as well.
So what would be the source of the layers? Is it something that we can import from like a...
I'm so glad you asked that question. That was going to be a little bit later, but let me jump into it right now. So there are a couple ways to use this. If you're like me and I do not have a coding background, I make all of my spreadsheets from scratch or I find them on the internet. But the way the Power BI Designer that's free that you can download has been designed is you can actually find data sets. You can pull them in from like Microsoft Access. You can pull them in from a number of other databases, and let me pull up that list as I talk so you know what they are. And you can actually import them. So you literally go to File, you go to New, and it'll pull up a list of all the different data sources that you can just like literally pull in, including internet data sources. I think you can also pull in from certain APIs, depending on, you know, your level of sophistication, hopefully beyond mine. And you can just have that data right there and both query it and also format it and crunch it and create pivot tables so that you can actually, you know, marry the data sets and give them relevance, you know, to each other if you have a model that has, for instance, multiple spreadsheets. Or as I said, you can create it from scratch. So it's sort of, you have to go out and actually do that intellectual exercise of figuring out, you know, where's the data that I want to know and think about. So here you see that tab that says Get Data. You would click on that and we will see all of the examples. So you can do Excel, CSV, XML files, you know, SQL database, and here are sort of the universe of options. So that, you know, well, I guess even Facebook, I wonder what you find there, but. So you basically have like the whole universe available to you because Excel is something that's so integrated and so malleable to you doing it yourself or literally pre-populating it with anything else. So once you've, you know, does that answer your question?
My question was more specific to the layers that you were showing.
Yeah.
So the layers are also these files, or will it support more like shape files or more like geometric files?
No, all of those files are coming from that same spreadsheet.
Okay.
So initially when I started, and I'll show you this again, that first file that I made where it says raw data and you're seeing it up here, like literally that's one Excel spreadsheet and I just named, you know, formatted it as a table. I called the columns whatever I wanted to name. You can actually have up to 10, you know, within a workbook. I mean, multiple more than that. And what you do is once you label things and name the table, then every time that you open up a Power View sheet, it'll show up here on the right side. Every time you open up Power Map, it'll show up on the right-hand side. So everything that you've put in Excel will show up for you already, and all you have to do is click on the things you want in your map or in your Power View Designer, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question?
I think maybe those base layers that you can build down onto the city lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
That map would fit.
Yeah. No, absolutely, excellent question. This is, because it's working with the Bing API, all that you have to do is literally click on the plus and the minus, and I'll get rid of this so you can see it, both of them, just easier. So right here, we're kind of zooming in on New York, and I know Massachusetts and Boston is right here. Yeah, so we're just drilling down, and you can go literally, I mean, as close as you want. And one of the things that you can do is you can change the visualization, so you can actually obviously make these any color you want, but you can make them any thickness you want. You can make them opaque, so that if you've got like a ton of different data points, you know, this model only has those 5 or 6 quick facts to really say, well, what can we learn from the census? But you can add anything you want, and you can change it so that you can see things one above, you know, something else. And then when you scroll over each one of these, you actually have a little tooltip telling you what the data point is already. Yeah.
So how do you, a lot of data we have has Latin loans on it, and then I'm guessing, I mean, how do you, does Bing, do we deal with the projection at all? Like, if my lat longs are coming from the Massachusetts State Plane projection, do I need to worry about putting it over into, I don't know if it's using, I'm guessing WGS 84 replicator, so do I have to make those?
Good question. You know, I think that you would have to be, you are in control of cleaning the data and making sure that when you map it, you know, this is such a great application because it will tell you if it doesn't recognize or if there's a lag in information in translating what's on your spreadsheet, regardless of what data source you pull it in from, you know, to what you've done. So both it's a good way to check errors. Like when I did this the first time, there was nothing in Nashville, Tennessee because I misspelled it. So it's sort of the same thing, sort of a simple version of saying that you do have to own that layer of at least saying, is Excel understanding what I want to do basically? And that's sort of the human element of cleaning and checking it. Because it will come in here and it will look like a spreadsheet regardless of where you've gotten it from. Does that answer the question? Okay. So basically I think, you know, once you've got this and you're saying, all right, I can do all these things, I think the extra layer that for me really makes this a special application is the fact that it's the first time you can actually share something in a way that can present and integrate well with HTML. So once I created the video, it actually creates it as an MP4, and I'll show you what that looks like. Let me close the data information. But you can actually save it in a way that you can put it up on YouTube, you can put it up anywhere else without having to go anywhere outside of Excel. And this, you know, it gives you the 3 options of doing it for tablets. This is done, you know, for an HD presentation, and it adds in all the effects that you've put in. You can also add a soundtrack. I don't know if anybody in this room would think of a cool song to go with this thing, but I could not. But you can add in music, you can add in a voiceover. You know, you can really make a video all your own. You can also add in and type text. So you can actually click in the map and open up a little box and, you know, give your map a title. You can write in for each scene what's going on. If you think that, you know, your reader will want explanations, if you're thinking about this for a presentation. And I think this is one of the things that really sets this application apart. You know, it's the fact that you can do this so easily, and it literally, I mean, making the video took me all of 2 minutes. And, you know, I can go back and edit it and just click record video again. You can do screen captures and it'll capture it professionally without you having to, you know, like do other things and go outside of the application, you know, in a way that you could just literally stick into a presentation file or put on the internet. I think that's part of the transformative piece for communities, because if you think about it, not every community can afford a CIO. Not every citizen agrees with how their leaders innovate. And if there's a resource gap, you're actually more powerful than your leader, because you can say, you know what, I want to present the data for my city differently. I want to show a different story than what's out there. And this is one of the applications that actually allows you to do that with a little bit of research and just kind of your own ability and thinking around, well, what should that story be? Are there any questions before I show you some other things? Okay. So once you've done that, you know, for those of you who want to preview the application, there's Power BI Designer. So that's where you saw the website that I initially had up. This one, if you put in your email, use it free, you actually download this, and right now it's in preview mode. And you can use it, again, with Excel and with any of the other data sources. And it's kind of neat because it has all these other visualizations at your disposal. So for instance, if you look at this data set, you see this bar right up here. You can actually now, other than just kind of the bar chart, the line chart, and the pie graph that I had within Excel, you can use it to do tree maps. You can use it to do line and bar charts. You can actually put a map within Power View. You can have a gauge. And you have just a whole world of optionality around how you present data, which gives you kind of a neat way to kind of play around with different things. So for instance, and it works the same way that Power View does within Excel. All you have to do is literally click Add New Page. And here we're using the same data set. So again, I didn't have to create a separate model. I literally just pulled my same spreadsheet into Power View Designer. I clicked with the names of all my cities and created a slicer so that I could actually, you know, click through states rather than cities in this one, for instance, and show population foreign born. Every time I click on something, my entire Power View sheet changes so that I'm actually showing the data for whatever state I'm on. So if you think about it, if you're giving a presentation as a city or as a citizen and you've got a 40-page PDF, this is your 40-page PDF, and it's cool and it's interactive and it's something that you can actually present right from Excel without creating something else and doing a lot of work. And for instance, if you wanted to say, let's see the educational attainment. Let's see what that actually tells me. All you do is Excel's already pre-populated all of the fields from your model, and all you do is click on this. You say, I want to see that, let's say by city. So you check that off. And then once the data's in there, all you do is you go to the top and you say, you know what, I want to see this in a tree. And then you make it bigger. And then you've got this great configuration where you can actually go around, and again with the tooltip feature, you can actually see what the data is. So you're not only visualizing, but you're also already pulling in the rich content. So I know what you're probably all asking yourselves. All right, this is great, but what do I do with this? Can I share it? Can I do anything with it? And the answer is yes. So one of the really cool things is Power BI has its own app. So I think right now there's an app in the Windows Store, but there's also a mobile app as well for iOS users. So if I go to my desktop, I've already downloaded my Power BI app, and I click on it, and all of my reports that I choose to share are on the app. So for instance, here you'll see all the other things that I'm working on, but most importantly, the demo that we were looking at today. So we click on it, and this was an earlier version without, the fancy colors. But this one actually shows you that it's already on my SharePoint. So the same sheet that I'm showing you, if I wanted to go and present it to somebody else, or let's say I wanted to share it with my team, or I wanted to share it with, whoever in the world I wanted to share it with, like citizens and anybody, I could share it publicly, and it has all the interactive features. So somebody can actually click through, see the data changing, and the beauty of it is that you've hidden your spreadsheet. So nobody has access to your model. So let's say that you've decided you only want to show 3 of those indicators and I only have 4 here. Let's say they're sensitive data that you don't want the public to see or individuals to see who aren't working on this project with you. You have control over that sharing. And it's extremely simple. Literally all you do is if you use Microsoft OneDrive, which is sort of this cloud-based drive, you literally upload your spreadsheet to OneDrive. And then once you have the app, you favorite your spreadsheet and it shows up on the app within your team site. So the sharing happens literally it takes you probably 5 minutes to share whatever you want, and you can just as easily remove it. You can just as easily refresh it if you make changes to your sheet. So if you're presenting something or thinking, how do I actually put something on the internet when I'm not a developer and I'm not creating a spreadsheet, this does that. And you also have the ability to generate a public link. So if you said this is on my SharePoint, but I actually want to share it with other people, that's one feature that you can actually do and send it amongst your team and generate an email so they can just look at this one feature rather than seeing everything on your Power BI SharePoint. So I'll pause there and see if you guys have any questions about anything that I've gone over, at least at this juncture. Yeah.
In the Power BI preview and the add-in, what features would be different?
There are a couple of things that are different. So if you're using it within Excel, that's how you can upload it right now to the SharePoint. So for instance, this is the sheet that I was showing you guys. I'll go back to get out of this thing. But when I'm in Excel, I'm saving this just as a typical Excel file, and those are the files that I can add to OneDrive, which I'll show you. The Power View Designer, I don't believe at this juncture, because it's in preview mode, allows you to do that, but Amy can correct me if I'm wrong, because I know things are always changing at Microsoft and innovating, but at this point, I, for instance, was unable to upload it and share it, but you can put it in Excel, and the only other difference is just the functionality around the presentation. So for instance, the tree map is only in the Designer, so the Designer has so many other cool features that I think are coming probably to Excel, but I can't speak for that. And for instance, like in Excel, you can do a bar chart, you can do the cluster charts, you can do the line chart. You can also do something that's really cool, which is a scattergram, where you can actually play, hit play and see something change over multiple years, like a little video within Power View. And that's a feature that's specific to the add-in and that's not a part of the Designer. So it's sort of like, I think it's really neat because you can play with all sorts of different visualizations. Like, Designer has the gauge, but, Excel right now does not. So you can see, what you like, and you have the option of using both without doing any extra legwork, because it only takes one model And for instance, with the model that I put in the designer was the one that I created for just Excel as a baseline, because you can pull in any data source that you like.
And how do you shape the
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because the designer has a terrific feature, which I'll show you right here. I think we might have touched upon it, but one of the things you can do is when you start fresh, totally go here, you can do new. And one of the things that it allows you to do is to pull from any spreadsheet. So like, let's say you created a spreadsheet like 10 years ago and you're like, I wonder what this would look like in this thing. You can do that. I mean, as long as I think it needs to be Excel 2013 just to recognize it and work with the features. But I think as long as you have the most recent version of Excel, you can pull in, data models that you have, and that's all it takes. You just go to get data, and there it is. Yeah. Are there any other questions? All right, so one other feature that I'd love to show you guys is just how easy it is to use OneDrive with this application, because that's really the one element that facilitates the sharing function in addition to creating the videos and actually, using a data model and turning it to life. So literally all you do is you log into your Office 365 account, as I have right here, and you go to OneDrive. And all you have to do is hit upload and pull in whatever data model has all these sheets within it. And once you have that, that's how you get them on your SharePoint. So right here you see that I've just clicked for sharing, and then they appear, and then I can favorite them as a report, and automatically they will show up right within my Power BI site. So when this, for instance, becomes an iOS app, everything that I put on there can be shared with anybody to the extent that I share it with everyone. And I can also have the option of sharing it only with a group. I have the option of sharing it only with my team that's a part of my admin portal, if I have a business, for instance, or I can share it with the whole world if I want to put it on Facebook or, wherever, just with that feature via the current add-in version in Excel. So do you guys have any other questions, or has anybody thought of a cool song for that video? Anybody? Anybody at all? I'm surprised, nobody. But I mean, I think it's a really great application because the way that I started using this was I had a challenge in that I'm not a developer. I wish that I had the tech chops of all the creativity that I see here today, and I thought, how in the world am I going to create something for my daily work where I'm taking all this massive community data and actually turning it into something? And the beauty of this is that you can really, again, innovate ahead of your leaders. You can think of whatever data doesn't mean to you in a PDF and think about how to translate it, find it on the internet, pull it in as a data source, and turn it into something both really beautiful, highly visual, and it's also highly relevant to you. So for instance, if we go back and we want to play a little bit more with our map, one of the things that we can do is, in addition to zooming in, let's say that I want to change the design elements because you want to make a video with a certain mood and feel. You can also go in and change themes. So you can make your map, look like an actual map, or you can make it look a little bit more futuristic. You as a person working with your data have total control over the visual presentation, for this information. And you can create the video with any look and feel that you want, or capture the screenshots with anything that you want. If you want to edit your tour and I wanted to start with this and delete another one, you can do that very easily. You can delete layers, you can delete scenes. If you wanted to say look at poverty with other information, so thinking about which states have the highest concentration as we're seeing in this map, but you say, what, I don't think that that's telling me enough of a story. I think that I want to see it in a different way. You can actually go right into your poverty layer and you can switch it and you can do bubbles, or you can do another bar chart, or you can switch it and you can have something that is more of like a heat map. And then if you feel like, that presentation just isn't giving me enough, you can go into the settings and you can actually go into settings for your layer by literally just clicking right within your tour editor. And you can change the radius, you can change the opacity, you can change the radius of influence, You can basically do whatever you want to say, this is telling the compelling story of the data that I want to work with. So, you are completely in control in the way that you present and both interpret and think about how you want others to see this data. One thing that's really interesting, I had one government official who looked at a model recently and said, you know what, I don't like those bar charts because that's making me nervous. I feel like people are going to see a really tall stick in my region and say, well, what the heck is going on? Are we not really investing there? And you know what, if you're a citizen and you want to tell that story, this actually lets you do that. If you're a government leader and you're kind of nervous about that, this lets you do the opposite. It lets you present that in a very different way. And I think that's among the many neat features that I think are part of this application. So are there any questions about anything that I've talked about today? I know are we close to time? You guys have had some great questions already, but I want to make sure. All right, so I'll end by showing you guys again how you can get this great tool. So there are two ways. You can either add it into Excel under File, your COM add-ins, and just select the options, or you can log in and I encourage you to do this even if you have Excel 2013, it's actually just put in your email, hit use it free, and it'll take you to a place where you can download the Power BI Designer in preview mode and see all the great features and optionality and start playing with the data of your community and see what story it tells you. And then hopefully think of a song to email me to add to that video. All right, well, thank you, and I'll stick around, and I'm sure Amy will as well in case any of you have any questions that you don't want to ask in front of the group.